Hi, and thank you so much for coming to this session as a part of the Virtual Vision 2020. This session is the CTE Research Network, the Practitioner Training Modules, and it is resources for understanding and using CTE data and research. My name is Cherise Moore, and I am a Principal TA Consultant with the American Institutes for Research. And some of the areas that I focus on are career technical education and adult education, providing training and TA to practitioners. And as a former CTE teacher, and CTE administrator, it is my absolute pleasure to be able to share this session with you to help you learn about the CTE Research Network Practitioner training modules. So, some of you may be familiar with the CTE Research Network, and some of you are not. In either case, in the next hour, we're going to learn about the research network. We're going to learn about the CTE Research Network Practitioner modules. I will be taking a deeper dive into Module 2 with you, which is on using data and research to improve career and technical education programs. Then I'll show you where to find the training modules that we are talking about today, and then allow some time for you to ask any questions as we wrap up this segment of this session today. There will also be a few opportunities throughout the presentation for you to share your thoughts and input around these modules. So, some background. This training was developed by the CTE Research Network, and the CTE Research Network is supported by the Institute of Education Sciences at the U.S. Department of Education, with funds provided under the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act through a grant to the American Institutes for Research. Network activities are directed toward increasing the number of CTE impact studies and strengthening the capacity of the field to conduct and use rigorous CTE research. AIR and its partners, the Association for Career and Technical Education, ACTE, JFF, and Vanderbilt University serve as the CTE Research Network Lead. Our mission is to provide the evidence base on the impact of CTE programs on student outcomes by increasing the number of CTE impact studies performed, strengthening field capacity to conduct and use rigorous CTE research, and you will find that the modules that we are talking about today, the practitioner training modules, really focus on that second bullet, strengthening field capacity to conduct and use rigorous CTE research, and it supports those activities through bullet 1, which is our overall goal of increasing the number of CTE impact studies performed. So, the purpose of the practitioner training modules is really for you. It's to support practitioners and policymakers in understanding and using data and research, particularly causal research. It's designed for state and district level CTE practitioners, policymakers, really anyone who can use data and research to inform decision making and support continuous improvement efforts. Our main goal and mission is to expand the evidence base. And related to that, we want to bring practitioners and researchers together so that we can better share research and understand research needs. Research, as you know, it can be used in so many ways to inform policy, to understand program effects, and to drive program improvement. But what we have learned and what I know from my own experience as a practitioner is that we don't always have the research background that can help to show the impacts of our work. So through these training modules, we really want to support practitioners in understanding and using not just research, but causal research. You will learn about best practices in data collection and organization and how that can help improve data systems and support our use of data so that we can make informed state and local decisions about CTE. So with that, I want to move into our first opportunity to check in with you and to allow you to share a bit around this topic. The question that I have for you as a discussion question is, what do you struggle with most when it comes to data, evaluation, or performance in your programs? If you can go ahead and take a moment or two to think about that and then type something in the chat that you struggle with most. Again, as it relates to data, evaluation, or performance in your program. I see some of you are sharing your thoughts. Please continue for another 20 seconds or so. Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing the things that you are struggling with when it comes to data, evaluation, or performance in your programs. So let's jump right into these training modules. There are 6 modules that we are developing, and the series of 6 training modules is really designed to support CTE educators in learning more about data and research. The modules need not be viewed in this order, but we do suggest that you consider doing so if you are planning to complete the entire series. So the 6 modules that we have, the first one is understanding CTE data and why it matters. Then we have using data and research to improve CTE programs. CTE program evaluation, why it matters to practitioners. Using state data to partner with researchers. Using research to design your CTE program for equity. And finally, how to communicate about your CTE program using research. These modules each contain their own PowerPoint slides, their own handouts and activities, and a facilitator's guide. They are going to be anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour long in length. As we said earlier, they are self-contained. They don't have to be viewed sequentially. They can be delivered online, in person, in a group setting, or individually. And while they are self-contained, we do want you to know that they build in complexity. And so later modules will draw on the terminology that has been used in earlier ones and the definitions that have been defined in earlier ones. But because we want them to really be self-contained, we do have a glossary of terms that will accompany each of the modules. In the next several slides, I will go through each of the modules, sharing with you the objectives for them and giving you a little bit of a feel for what they're all about. So let's take a look and start with Module 1, Understanding CTE Data and Why It Matters. So with this module, you will be able to better understand what CTE data are and how research can be used to improve CTE programs. You'll also be able to connect data to federal accountability requirements contained within the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, also referred to as Perkins 5. In addition, you'll be able to define what evidence-based research is, understand why it's important, and know where to find it. This module contains real-world examples that will be offered to help you connect theory into practice. And so you'll see the objectives here on the screen. The goal of this module is that by the end of it, you'll be able to answer fundamental questions about data and research for CTE programs, connect data to Perkins 5 requirements, define evidence-based research, understand why it's important and where to find it, and then understand real-world examples of CTE data and research. And that's how we get you started. And then we move to Module 2, which I shared earlier we're going to take a deeper dive into. But with this module on using data and research to improve CTE program objectives, you'll have a better understanding of how data and research can be used to improve programs and how to access this information. You'll also learn how a continuous improvement process can be launched. This is going to help you focus on short and long-term planning, and you'll be provided again with real-world examples and tested tools to undertake this work. Our goal is within each of the modules to have real examples to support the connection from theory to practice. The objectives in this module, again, understanding how data and research are used to improve programs, how to access and use research relevant to CTE programs, learning about the continuous improvement model as it applies to CTE, and then looking at short and long-term program planning. Module 3, CTE program evaluation and why it matters to practitioners. And in this module, you will be able to define educational impact and what it means to have an impact in CTE. Here, through this module, you'll understand the different performance measures and program evaluations. You'll be able to explain why program evaluation is valuable for CTE programs and understand the different types of evaluations and their purposes. Finally, in this module, you'll learn about logic models. You'll find out what they are and how to use one to assess and determine program outcomes. Examples of best practices in program evaluation will also be shared so that you can see real examples of this at work. Module 4 is on using state data to partner with researchers. And in this module, you'll be able to describe why states should partner with researchers and understand how to include CTE data in your state's accountability systems and state longitudinal data systems. You'll also be able to explain how states can partner with researchers and have a real strong understanding of how to use real-world examples to showcase how a partnership with a researcher can work and benefit you and your program. So the objectives in this module, again, why you should consider partnering with the researcher, how to include CTE data in accountability systems and state longitudinal data systems, ways in which you can partner with researchers, and again, showcasing real-world examples for how research partnerships really can work. Next, we have Module 5, using research to design your CTE program for equity. This is an exciting module for us and one that we hope you find exciting too. In this module, you'll have a better understanding of how research can be used to improve equity in CTE programs. You'll also learn about concepts of equity in Perkins 5 as they relate to special populations of students. You'll be able to identify underperforming student subgroups and explain the implications of a local equity gap analysis. Most importantly, you will be positioned to understand and apply what the research says about equity in CTE. The objectives for this module include defining special populations, identifying underperforming student subgroups, explaining the implications of a local equity gap analysis, understanding and applying what the research says about equity in CTE, using Perkins 5 data to disaggregate the requirements to improve equity outcomes, explain the difference between equitable access and equitable outcomes, and you'll be able to determine best practices for closing the CTE opportunity gap and ensuring equity in your CTE programs. And our sixth module, the final module, is on how to communicate about your CTE program using research objectives. In this module, you will learn many effective strategies for communicating your research findings to a variety of different audiences and stakeholders. This will help you be able to successfully publicize your CTE program's value. You will also understand techniques for communicating instructional benefits based on real-world examples. The module objectives here, again, communicating out. So much good information about what we are doing in our CTE programs doesn't get communicated out. And a focus of this module is to help you with communicating your program's value and the research findings to others who may be decision makers around your programs. And we will use some real-world examples to show you what's possible as you are communicating about your CTE program. Okay, so again, now that you have a little more understanding of the 6 practitioner training modules, I want to check in with you to ask you to please tell me, do any of the modules resonate with you? And which of the modules would you find most useful and why? If you want to think about that again, which of them jumped out as something of interest to you? And which do you find most useful for you, most valuable for you, and why? So if you can please share that in the chat pod, that would be great. And just for reference so that you remember what they all are, here are our 6 practitioner training modules: understanding CTE data and why it matters, using data and research to improve CTE program, CTE program evaluation, why it matters to practitioners, and using state data to partner with researchers, using research to design your CTE program for equity, and finally, Module 6, how to communicate about your CTE programs using research. So if you can just take a moment to think about, do any of the modules resonate with you, and which modules will be most useful for you and why? And I'll give you a moment to type that into the chat. And you can either type the module name or just the module number as you see them there. All right, about 10 seconds more. Great, so it seems like the modules will be used a lot given your interest in the areas that we have. Thank you so much for sharing that feedback with us. Okay, so we are now going to take a deeper dive into Module 2, You have a solid foundation of all of the 6 modules now, at least what they're about. And we wanted to spend some time to go a little bit deeper into one of the modules so that you'll understand what to expect when you yourself are ready to learn more about and use these training modules. So Module 2 is on using data and research to improve CTE programs. And in this module, one of the big focuses, the main piece of this module is that it focuses on the continuous improvement model that you see here before you. Educators, as we know, should rely on data and evidence-based research to guide their continuous improvement efforts. The model that we have here describes a structured, iterative, and continuous improvement process that educators can follow to apply data and research they collect. Continuous improvement really is about implementing and monitoring ongoing feedback, and it's a truly important component for creating and maintaining successful CTE programs. For practitioners to engage in continuous improvement and to use data and research to go beyond just accountability, you need to maintain an effective data collection system for decision making and make data-based decisions that really lead to equity and improvement for all students. And as we know, there are many, many improvement frameworks that exist. In this module and in our work, we chose to look at the Plan, Do, Study, Act process. It's conceptually simple. It has 4 steps, and each step requires careful and thoughtful planning. And we feel that it really provides a good structure for using data and research to improve educational programming. The first step, plan, determine what it is you're seeking to accomplish and how you will assess your results. The next step, do, design and implement your proposed improvement plan. Then study, collect and analyze data and review the research to help contextualize your result. And then finally, act. And in ACT, you will be using the results of your analysis to fine-tune your engagement and continuous improvement. And you see that it's a cycle, and then you start over again after you've refined with planning, do, study, and act. So I'll describe each of these in a bit more detail as you'll see developed in Module 2. So plan. The first step of the Plan, Do, Study, Act really helps you focus on planning what it is that you are going to do and helping you understand the types of data and research you should access to guide your efforts. We will highlight in this section what data is necessary to be collected based on what the problem is that you're trying to solve. Let's take a look at some of the slides to look at an overview of the data needed and who needs to be involved in the planning. We'll start with the who. So the first step is to build a team, build a coalition, a team that is representative of your education community. Ideally, you want to engage those who will be responsible for carrying out or directly affected by your work. So this could include teachers, college faculty, site leaders, students, parents, employers, teacher unions, community-based organizations, whoever your coalition of stakeholders is. This group is critical for gaining buy-in to the work that you do. And ultimately, those responsible for carrying out your plan must believe in it and be able to carry it out if it is to succeed. So here, imagine, for example, a mandate coming from the top down without any input from teachers, without their information on what that mandate means for workload or planning or student needs. they may find that there is not a lot of buy-in, regardless of what the value is of the mandate. So to help structure your efforts for success, again, build a coalition. And you will also want to look at convening this group based on your comprehensive local needs assessment that was developed as a part of your Perkins grant application. Within that, an advisory group was convened to help you, and they might serve as a good resource for starting to build that coalition. Then after you determine the who, then you need to determine the what. You need to define the problem. The continuous improvement process is really most effective when all of the resources are targeted to a high priority program. So you will want to work with your team to determine where action is needed. And this will entail you collecting data of various types and from various stakeholders. And you'll see some of them listed here on the slide. You might collect this data using a variety of tools like surveying or focus groups or reviewing critical data together. You may also wish to review data with those who you've identified as your stakeholder group. And once you have start to collect the data, then you will want to analyze the results. And you will want to identify, based on that analysis, areas that you have of concern that are high priority problems and high priority concerns. You may find that multiple issues arise, but you will need to prioritize them and determine what requires immediate attention, what is a high priority issue, problem, or concern, and what problem that you want to address will most likely have the most significant, meaningful change for your program and the students. So again, a part of defining the problem is collecting the data and researching. And places that you may go to do that include sources such as ACTE, Advanced CTE, and journals like ERIC and the Journal of Career Technical Education. But I also want to direct you to our website, the CTE Research Network website, where you will also find research and resources that can help you with collecting data and defining the problem. Again, the research network was really created to help strengthen the research base for CTE, and we have done so and are doing so by sponsoring rigorous research studies and offering trainings to researchers and practitioners, this being an example of the training modules for practitioners. And then as you start to analyze the data, one of the places that you will want to start is the Perkins 5 indicators and looking at those. This data can be assessed and accessed through your Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, your CLNA, or if that's unavailable, you can obtain that data from your state agency that administers Perkins 5. This data is going to really provide some good insight into outcomes of students who concentrate in a CTE program or a program of study. Specifically, you'll see at the secondary level, the indicators: academic attainment, graduation rates, post-secondary placement, non-traditional occupations, program quality, and at the post-secondary level, post-secondary placement, post-secondary credential, non-traditional occupations. And you are familiar with these indicators. And then you may also have state-specific indicators as well as local performance indicators that you can apply as you start to analyze performance gaps. And as you are looking at the data and starting to analyze where there might be problems, again, as a part of the plan stage, you're going to want to look specifically at how you disaggregate the data so that you can see even closer what issues, what concerns you find are actionable. You are required, of course, to track data by subgroups, and so this makes that easier to look at. You break out student populations by gender, race, ethnicity, migrant status, special population status, and you will also wish to examine outcomes of students who are participating in different types of educational clusters or pathways and see what that looks like, where the differences are that you can find out as you're analyzing the performance gaps. This will help you be able to know who's enrolling in what types of programs. And then as you start to understand these gaps, you'll be able to have a better picture of how your program is operating and what might be problems that you need to address as you begin this continuous improvement cycle. One way in which you can do that is through a root cause analysis. We're going to be helping you think through what that would look like in this module. Once you have identified an area or student population for attention, this root cause analysis helps you start to formulate the reasons why you may have an issue or concern, what may be causing the gap or the underperformance. Understanding what the factors are affecting students' performance can really help inform the intervention strategy that you want to put forward. So a root cause analysis is a really strong way to do this. It's a foundational step to really surfacing the information that will provide you guidance on how to move forward. So once you've identified a problem in a problem statement, you'll identify the factors that may be involved. Those factors typically encompass broad areas such as students, schools, systemic issues. And then for each factor, you're going to identify underlying issues that help to explain why the problem exists more thoroughly. So there could be multiple issues identified, and they might not all have equal value, but as you do this root cause analysis process, it will become clear how you move forward with an intervention strategy for improving and addressing what your problem or concern is. So that's all a part of plan. And then we move to our next component of the continuous improvement model, do. And in do, you are designing and implementing your improvement plan. This is where it starts with the observation and then becomes more complex and rigorous as you begin to implement and do create a plan. So at the do step, once you've identified the problem that you are planning to solve, you can start formulating an action plan. Collecting data and reviewing information is important to this part as well. And you'll begin that by conducting more focused review of the empirical research literature. You'll look at the literature to really identify both the problem and the evidence-based intervention strategies that others have developed related to that problem. Studies of the problem itself may not provide an actual intervention, but they can help to start unpacking the problem a bit more. You may also review national or state data to identify high-performing sites that have populations or programming similar to your own. And you might wish to consult a state agency or researchers with experience working in the field. And as you are doing this and gathering this information, you will find that it really will provide you this necessary information to begin action planning. So as you start to create your action plan, there are several pieces that you'll need to look at as components of that. You'll want to identify strategies to address your identified problem. So here, what are the areas that you will target? Then you want to stipulate activities to address each strategy. This is the what you will do piece of it. And then you'll establish benchmarks. So dates by when you will complete those things, who will help you complete those things. What you see here is an example of the strategy, the goal, the task to get to that goal, who and when. This is your plan, your action plan that you will use to address the problem that you have identified. So the next step then is the study step. And here you are going to be comparing the actual with expected results to see if once you implemented your action plan and the do, if it resulted in the change that you were hoping to see and the ability to address the problem the way in which you were expecting it to be. So study is really built on the previous work that you have done and been engaged in. And here again, you are collecting data and analyzing data to evaluate what the impact has been of the do component. As we've said, using data and research to improve CTE programs is an iterative process. So you continue to look at the data and the research. Once you've implemented your activities and assessed your results, you'll study and reevaluate your approach to continually improve. And if you find things have worked, then you continue that and maintain that. If you are dissatisfied with the results, then you are able to, at this phase, after finding that out, pivot to a new approach, which we'll look at in the final component of this model. So under study, here you are tracking progress. So you're looking at indicators over time. You are seeing if what you have put in place as action steps have shown growth. You are setting outcomes, measurable outcomes, so that you know what it is that you are evaluating. And this means that you'll be able to obtain data around those outcomes so that you can construct your numerators and denominators. So one useful strategy here is to consult with your district or your, if you have an institutional research office, to learn about data that already exists so that you are able to do good comparisons. You'll need to collect data on a regular basis. It's not something that you do once. You'll need to do it on an ongoing basis to really assess your progress successfully. And this is much easier if you already have the systems established so that you can access this data easily. Be sure that your collection procedures are consistent for collecting the data, and set a timeline for when that collection of data will occur so that you know that you're obtaining valid and reliable data. You must be mindful when outcomes can be achieved in selecting indicators. So here we look at long versus short-term outcomes, and we look at process indicators, interim outcomes, and middle and long-term outcomes. So process indicators are used to track the progress you're making in rolling out our initiative, rolling out our action plan, our activities and strategies that we're implementing. And this may include metrics that are related to the number of times that groups are meeting or the number of individuals attending activities. The information you collect may offer great formative feedback, which can help to shape your work. Then we look at interim outcomes. And here, this will help provide you information on early successes. that can be related to your long-term goals. But due to the time it may take for students to progress through a CTE program, these interim outcomes really offer early information to help you determine the success of your efforts. So for example, if you are seeking to decrease student dropout rates, you might wish to measure the number of 10th grade students who are on track to graduate on time. And then middle and long-term outcomes. Here you are offered insights into whether you are achieving your overall goal, recognizing that this may take a significant amount of time to manifest. We don't want you to be discouraged, so that's why we have process, indicators, interim outcomes, and middle and long-term outcomes, because we know that sometimes it takes a longer time to see success. It may take years to achieve that. So we started with the who, and we're going back to the who now. As we look at this component of study, it is important to really make sure that we are engaging stakeholders and understanding how to use the data to drive the change that we want. So we want to start again by making sure that we build buy-in among our CTE stakeholders. We want to engage them at all stages of the Plan, Do, Study, Act, but especially here, because this is where we're sharing really the results of our actions. And they need to understand how the initiative is working to benefit students or not working. And involving them in reviewing the data and research can really help to improve the accuracy of the information and communicate their results in a much more efficient and effective manner. So you'll see here on this slide, that goal is to share that information on a regular basis, share your findings on an ongoing basis, and make sure that you are sharing it in ways that is understandable. You don't want to overcomplicate the information. So instead of sharing a table or stats, you might consider figures or charts or infographics of some form to share and publicize the results. You'll see on this slide there's a link to an article that can really help you see an example of how data have been used to drive change. And you'll see the way in which it was communicated to those stakeholders. So the final component of the Plan, Do, Study, Act continuous improvement model is ACT. And here is where we use their results to strengthen our activities. And as I shared as we were looking at study, this is where if things are working well, you strengthen them. If they are not giving you the expected result, you have the opportunity to pivot, to act. And this is really helping you reflect on what you've done in the past through this cycle. So it's intended to be an iterative process. ACT here means giving you the ability to take the time to review the performance results and the context of your work and feed the study information you collect back into the process to make changes as appropriate. Simply put, did you achieve what you set out to do? Are you satisfied with your results? If not, it may be you're using the wrong approach. And ACT gives you the chance to pivot and apply the data and research that you collected to determine where changes are needed and mobilize your team to refine your efforts. Or, again, to solidify and strengthen areas where you are seeing the results you expected. And here, you would look back at an operational plan to look at what the next goals are or what those goals were and different ways in which you can address the problem. You might find that you will ask some questions about, are these these actions still appropriate or necessary for meeting the goal of the problem that we identified or addressing the problem that we identified? Did we find any new research that revealed something different or suggested a different approach? And as you are looking at these questions, you will want to look at then, okay, what about the activities that we had put in place? Are they accomplishing what we had hoped? And if not, maybe they need to be updated or replaced. And then finally, the benchmarks that you're going to be using to assess the success as you pivot or continue doing what you found effective. Are they accurately measuring what we set up to assess? And is there a need to reset or revise these benchmarks? So these are critical questions as you are reviewing your action plan and looking at the results of the study phase to determine how you might want to pivot or continue with what you have implemented. And you're going to look at this in several different phases, just like we did when we looked at the study. You aren't expecting everything to happen immediately. So you'll look at it in short-term outcomes, middle-term outcomes, and long-term outcomes, and have data points that relate to each of those. And you see we have some examples. Short-term might be a year, long-term might be more than 4 years. And then below that, you will see the way in which you can check your performance across each of these outcome time frames. So as an example, your long-term goal might be to improve student college and career transitions, but you might have a short-term goal that might be to just assess the student participation in your CTE programming overall. So those, again, show things that are happening now as an outcome versus long-term. And you also might have planning that you are doing as you are acting and revising your action plan, your operational plan, that looks at the setting and the purpose for your planning. It needs to recognize that the purposes for your work might differ. You might have planning that is occurring for secondary, planning that is occurring for post-secondary or state level outcomes. And as you are looking at those different purposes for which you are planning, you'll have different expected outcomes and results that you're hoping to see. You will want to use the continuous improvement model to help you look at what you're planning for more explicitly so that you can see and measure your goals more effectively and pivot and act and plan to do differently as appropriate. So now that we've shared with you a little bit more on Module 2, we want to share with you where you can find the modules. We really hope that what we shared with you is some highlights around that second module got you excited to think about continuous improvement and things that you can do in your program to really think about the plan, do, study, act, continuous improvement model and how it might work for you. And we hope that from that excitement and eagerness that you are ready to find out how you access these modules. So let's share where you will be able to find them when they are completed. So I will start by sharing that we expect the modules to be available to you towards the end of this year or early in 2021. There are 6 and some are ready now and some will be ready soon hereafter. So we may be posting them in partial postings or we may wait and do them all at the same time. That is still to be determined. But they will be available in 2 places. And this is going to be one of them, the CTE Research Network website. You'll see the link at the top and you can use this link to go to the training section on our website, and within that, right in the middle, you will see the practitioner training modules, and you'll see that they are coming soon. So cteresearchnetwork.org/training, right in the middle of the page there, you will see the 6 modules will be listed there shortly. The other great place that you can find them is on the ACTE website. You'll find them at the ctelearn.org part of the ACTE website. There, if you click on that link, you will see that these are a part of the free resources that will be available for you as practitioners to access and use at any time. So 2 places that you will have our modules available for you. And we hope that that will make it easy for you to use them and access them. Again, look for them at the end of this year or at the beginning of 2021. So I want to thank you for being attentive and spending this time with me. As we prepare to wrap up, I have one final discussion question for you. And that final question is, how might you use these modules with your program? Now that you know a little bit more about all of the 6 and a significant amount more about Module 2, how might you use these modules with your program? I'll give you a moment to type into the chat. Okay, and take about 10 more seconds. Okay, great. Well, I really do hope that you will access the modules using the 2 places where you can find them to use them with your program based on what you shared in terms of how you might use these modules with your program. So finally, I want to encourage you to connect with the network. We would love for you to connect with the network. You can learn about and stay informed about when the modules will go live, but also about research in CTE in general. We want to make sure, again, our purpose is to providing a place where we can increase the capacity of the field to conduct and use CTE research. And by having you connect with the network, you will help us to do that. And there are 4 easy ways that you can connect with us. As you'll see on the screen here, you can visit our website at any time, cteresearchnetwork.org. You can follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn and get all of the news and updates of what's happening. You can sign up on the website for our mailing list, and you can also just email us at cteresearchnetwork@aar.org, and we will get you connected with the network. So thank you again for your time today. It was a pleasure sharing the information about the CTE practitioner training modules for the CTE Research Network. I hope that you enjoyed your time and look forward to seeing you virtually in the modules. If there are any questions, I am happy to answer them. Thank you so very, very much.